Welcome to Getting Defensive Weekend Primer presented by Gridiron Ratings. I'm your host, JJ Wenner, and tonight we talk about our free agent stock report, which players and new homes tickle our fancy. I am joined, as always, by my friend and Gridiron Ratings senior IDP analyst. You can find him on Twitter at the IDP Tipster, the IDP OG Gary Van Dyke. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great, JJ. I'm excited to have John back in the rotation here. We got Brandon. We're ready to rock and roll. So, yeah, I'm loving life right now.
Fantastic. And as he said, with us tonight, the author of the Key and Diagnose series. You can find him on Twitter at BJack83. Brandon Jackson, how are you, sir?
I'm doing wonderful, JJ, man. I'm glad to be on the pod here with Johny The Greek. I've been listening to him for years, espousing his IDP expertise. So
it's always a little intimidating, isn't it? Like when you get to be on a pod with like people you've been reading.
Right, yeah.
I love it. Well, speaking of, joining us is the best IDP writer on IDP, guys. Don't tell anybody I said it.
Yeah.
And the co-host of the DF Triple S podcast, also the new free real estate pod, Johny The Greek. He's on Twitter at OrangeMan3142. How are you doing, John?
Good, great. Good to see you guys. How are things? It's good to be back. Thanks for the warm welcome.
Man, stroking that cat like an evil genius. I love it.
Right.
Yeah, she's really messing with my setup right now. This is unreal.
Well, listen, we are a animal-friendly show, so keep the pets coming. Before we jump into tonight's topic, make sure you like and subscribe below to get all of our most recent content. Follow us on Twitter at Gridiron Rating. Visit our website, gridironratings.com. And remember, your path to the title starts with Gridiron Ratings. Now let's check on the news. John, Matt Lombardo is reporting that Doug Peterson wants to go offense with the first overall pick. Now, for weeks, every mock draft I've seen has Aiden Hutchinson going first overall. Do you think that the Jags will go offense?
I wouldn't be surprised if they do. I think it's probably a mistake for them to pass on that, though, because I mean, if you were to pair Hutchinson with Josh Allen, that's a decade plus of two dominant edge rushers right there, and in the modern NFL, you got to have the pass rush. So I don't know. I wouldn't do it, but I'm also not an NFL GM, so what do I know?
Good point. Now I know we were talking a little bit before the show. I would not be unhappy to see Aiden Hutchinson fall a spot or two. As a Jets fan, right? Secret Jets fan. I guess I don't talk about it on every single podcast, but I would love to get an edge defender, right? Come the fourth pick. So that just helps Thibodeau drop.
If they don't pick Hutchinson, you think an offensive lineman?
I would think you would have to go offensive line, right? Protect your most valuable asset.
Right, yeah, because they seem to be all in on Trevor Lawrence. I'm thinking that'd probably it'd have to be a tackle.
It would have to be one of the big tackles. Who's going first as far as tackles? Sorry to go dirty, Gary.
That's all right. No, I'm all ears.
Yeah.
Are we thinking Evan Neal?
Evan Neal. I think that's his name isn't popping up.
Yeah, he's good. He's good. I wouldn't mind seeing them go with the tackle. I think that's the best for Trevor Lawrence. Pick up some wide receiver weapons a little bit later in the draft, but you got to build around your young quarterback. That's your most valuable asset. So nothing's better than protecting that man. Brandon, Jordan Poyer has hired Drew Rosenhaus. Do you remember that when that was like a dirty name in sports? Drew Rosenhaus. But he hired Drew Rosenhaus. He's seeking a contract extension. Now, do you think that the Bills should extend a 31-year-old safety?
I mean, Jordan Poyer, he's been one of the best safeties in the league. So, I mean, he's got that working for him. I've been listening to Drew Rosenhaus for a long time, living down here in South Florida. He's a very good agent. I think this is the right time. Well, I mean, 31 years old, that's when players start to decline. So I'm not sure. They're probably going to play hardball. They'll probably draft his replacement and say, hey, look, we drafted your replacement. We're not going to extend you. But I mean, to give Jordan Poyer credit, he's been one of the best safeties in the league. Bills have had the #1 rated defense last year, #1 rated pass defense. So he's a key cog on that defense. So if he holds out or something, he could, really stiff the Bills. So it's kind of hard to really say. If they do extend him, it'll be like some type of short-term deal.
Now, I appreciated the stiff the bill pun. I don't know if you meant it as a pun, but as a father and a big proponent of dad jokes, I appreciate you, Brandon. Gary, former Raven safety DeShon Elliott signed a 1-year deal with the Lions. Does this dampen any expectations you have for either Tracy Walker or Will Harris?
Well, the first thing it does is it's got my attention to where I'm coming up in the IDP incentive. We're pretty deep into a league, and I'm pretty sure that this young gentleman is a free agent. So if he's still sitting there, I could use another safety. I like him in this to begin with. He's on the field. I think he's as good as Tracy Walker. I think it'll probably be Will Harris that'll probably take the step down and maybe the third safety role. I mean, Will Harris has had his chance. He's not that good. I don't know how else to put it, folks. I just don't think he's that good in real life. So from that aspect, I think it's actually it's not his job to lose. I think that they'll probably have them both on the field at start out, and I think Elliott will be the guy that ends up playing. It could turn into an interesting role. We could see something come out of this. He's a solid enough player. I think if he's put in the right situation up there, yeah, I'm definitely looking to add him here shortly. You probably can't count on him as a starter at the moment, but I mean, like I said, I'm deep in a draft. We all are, actually. Yeah, all of us are. So if I picked him up right here and he worked out, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, we are definitely deep into the recesses of IDP talent in that league. John, where do you think? Do you think DeShon Elliott will have an IDP relevant role?
That is a great question. I really don't know how to judge between DeShon Elliott and Will Harris. I'm pretty certain Tracy Walker's locked and loaded, even just from I don't know if anyone saw that video. I think it was last week with what the hell's his name? Dan, the kneecap
Campbell.
fighter.
Oh,
thank you,
no.
Campbell.
Yep.
Yeah, talking to Tracy and telling him, hey, you're part of the foundation here. You're one of the guys I'm going to lean on. There aren't a ton of veterans. There's not a lot of veteran talent there. He's one of the guys. So I feel good about Walker. The other two, it's a coin flip. Last year they did do some weird stuff with. You remember Dean Marlowe at the end of the year?
Yeah. Now he's in Atlanta. And we should pay attention to that maybe. But go ahead.
Right, but they've done that in recent history, so there might be a role for all three of them. But I definitely coin flip between the other two and just see how it lands. Go from there.
Yeah, I guess realistically, if I'm sitting here and I have to take Will Harris, assuming that he's a starter right now, I'm gonna look past him and get somebody like Elliott a round or two later or something like this. So Walker should be a lock. I agree with John. I mean, there's no reason not to think that, not comparably.
Yeah, I agree too. That Tracy Walker, he's going to remain at the strong safety spot, and then it'll be between Elliott and Will Harris. I know they've been talking in the media saying that they don't know where to put him, either at free safety at corner, because apparently he's versatile, and they've been talking about they don't know where to put him. But I think with the signing with DeShon Elliott, it's clear that they've been looking for a replacement, and I think Elliott's probably going to slide in there as a free safety, and then they'll be able to use Will Harris as like a utility guy, third safety, cornerback, whatever they want to use him at.
It's notable the Lions, their philosophy has kind of been looking for the right mindseted player to join them, a kind of a work hard ethic, clean bill, you know, just somebody that's wanting it. You know, they bring in good character guys to try to bring into that locker room, and they're still in the process of changing what was a really terrible, you know, locker room, bedside manner, whatever you want to call it, feel within that organization and that team. So they're still in the process of it, but it's going to be really interesting.
I don't know if Dan Campbell's going to be ultimately successful to the level he wants to be, but he did a hell of a job last year in turning around the attitude in that locker room.
Right.
That's even in their losses,
right
you
there.
saw them fighting.
Right.
Every
game.
last second.
Right.
So
basically, I think we could still say he's been successful so far. It might not show up in the record. I mean, you know, if he wasn't the coach going into next year, he's not going to leave a bad taste in anybody. You know, he did a good job in doing that pretty quickly.
Absolutely. Craig Reith says Gary just can't quit those Lions.
He asked. JJ asked.
I did not, Craig. He told me to talk about the Lions. Well, gentlemen, let's get right to our main topic. Over the past few weeks, we have hit on every major move in the defensive landscape of the NFL. From the blockbuster trades to confusing signings, we've discussed them all in depth. Most importantly, we touched on the impact these moves will have on your IDP rosters. Tonight, we take a look at what moves you can make to impact your 2022 IDP performance, because that's why we're all here. So we're going to talk about some players that you can get added to your roster who you might not be expecting to perform at the level they shall. Guests always go first. So, John, who is the first player you want to talk about?
Okay, so this is the top three. I'm going to go with JC Jackson first. And so this is going to be part of a bigger kind of theme that I have with some of these guys here, is that corner changes a ton year to year. Just the guys that get used, the guys that get targeted, the guys that are good for streaming. And with JC Jackson going over there, I mean, he was great in the Patriots, but we've traditionally seen Patriots players leave and not do as well in other places, right? Even Stephon Gilmore last year, like, disappeared when he went to the Panthers, right? So that could be a thing, but I think just the shuffling gives us an opportunity. If he can remain as good as he was in New England over with the Chargers, that gives Asante Samuel Jr. a chance to be really good, because, you know, think about it. You're the opposing quarterback, either consciously, subconsciously, you're dropping back to pass. Who are you throwing at? Are you throwing at JC Jackson, or are you throwing at a second-year guy that, you know, hasn't been in the league all that often? That's like a real thing. We saw that last year with Trayvon and the other Cowboys, Jordan Lewis. The other corners on that team had excellent years because people didn't want to go after Trayvon. We see that in different places. Miami, Byron Jones. No one wants to target Byron Jones. So Xavier Howard has good years, year after year after year. I think we could see a similar effect in LA. So maybe JC Jackson isn't the guy, but maybe this helps Asante Samuel and the other corners on that team.
Always find the lesser of two corners. Now, Gary, what is your philosophy on drafting corners? What do you look for? Now, I know we generally don't draft corners until later, but what do you look for in a corner?
Exactly what he just described, because by the time I ever get around to getting any on my roster, then I'm looking for those guys that aren't the good guys. You know, they aren't the best starter on the team. So, you know, I look for opposite. I think that the default after that is I might experiment with a high-profile rookie if he happens to be there and he is profiled at the time to start. You know, but it's usually guess the first week, and after that, I'm streaming.
Adjust. Yep. Guess and adjust. That is correct.
Right. Now, in some certain situations, like I just missed out on Bynum Cameron.
Yes.
Which, I missed out on him in our IDP incentive. I'm still upset about it. Look, I just talked about it Tuesday, and I'm saying it again. And I think I mentioned something to you last night, John, about this guy. Maybe, I don't know. Yeah, I'm tore up about that. That's a good cornerback play right now, folks. He'll be playing some safety. Anyway,
All
we'll
right,
move
Brandon,
on.
who do you have for us?
Well, since we're on the topic of corners, then I'll just go straight to Isaiah Oliver. During the course of my research with Richie Grant, I came upon Isaiah Oliver. Dean Pease was very impressed with him. His season was cut short 4 games because he had a knee injury. But Dean Pease just talked about him the whole last season, how he progressed and improved so much in coverage, and how important the nickel cornerback spot is in his scheme. We'll use it, to blitz the quarterback, and he's a solid corner in coverage, fairly decent against the run. So I'm looking at Isaiah Oliver because I was going over looking at some of his tape. He looked good. When I'm looking at a corner, like I'm looking at these high volume nickel corners like Kenny Moore Jr. He comes in the slot on passing downs, and they use him in a variety of ways. And Marlon Humphrey, guys like that, guys are solid tacklers and good in coverage.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm looking at Oliver. I was looking at some of his stats, and they blitzed him 10 times in 4 games. So he was on pace for like 40 blitzes throughout the course of the season. So I'm kind of intrigued. It's kind of a speculative ad because he's not as good a run defender as guys that I noted. But looking at his usage, I think he can, be like a surprise corner.
As our buddy Tripp likes to say, you want those slot corners because you want players who are the closest to the ball, and they're the closest corners to the ball when the ball is snapped, right? You have most opportunity to make a play the closer you can be to that ball. Gary, who is your first player up?
I'm going to take this opportunity because I kind of wanted to pick John's brain and your guys' brain about him anyways, and that's Lorenzo Carter, who just signed with Atlanta. Now, the guy has not been IDP relevant, really. I mean, he's an outside linebacker, edge rusher type guy. He's been with the Giants for a long time. He was actually a pretty high-profile guy when he came out years ago. I think he was out of Georgia, possibly. I think they spent a 3rd round on him, if I remember right. I'm trying to remember. It's been a long time. But either way, they put some capital in him. But as in IDP purposes, he's never amounted to anything. He's not a superstar either in real life. But I'm intrigued to see what Atlanta does with him. I think a lot of his hampering or a lot of his problem was with the Giants and how they schemed him, not necessarily using.
Howard wrote down my dad did.
My wife's father has just passed away.
Oh,
are you
I'm
serious?
so sorry. Do you have to go?
Oh.
All right, I'll take care of it.
Yeah, well, we got you, man. Sorry, Gary.
Right,
take care of
brother.
it, man. We got you. Jesus.
Wow. Life comes at you fast, gentlemen.
It does. Good God. I mean, you tell me, fellas, you want to finish it out, or I'm up to you.
I think Gary would want us to finish out.
All right, let's finish it out.
So he was talking about Lorenzo Carter.
Yep.
Lorenzo came over from the Giants. I don't know. What do we feel about him going to Atlanta?
It's all you, Brandon. I got no feelings.
Well, I mean, you're looking at Atlanta. I mean, they need pass rusher depth like really bad. They were by far they had by far the least amount of sacks last season, and they discussed it in their end of season press conference, the GM and the head coach, how their lack of pass rush it caused them a lot of problems. The offense couldn't get on the field, and they've notated that pass rush is their main priority. They weren't able to get one in free agency. They kept with a cap situation. I expect them to go after that in the draft. They're hoping that one of those elite guys dropped to them at number 8. But for the meanwhile, Lorenzo Carter, I mean, he's looking good as their main pass rusher right now. He's taking over for Dante Fowler, who was a huge disappointment for them.
Yeah,
I think he's going to get majority of the snaps. He's shown decent upside. He played, outside linebacker with the Giants. So I'm thinking that he's kind of like a speculative ad. Like I wouldn't like in small leagues, standard leagues, 12 man.
But you're also
like
going to need, right, for him to be worth anything, you're going to need high sack points, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Because he's a linebacker. And that's one of the things that stinks about IDP and these outside linebackers, right?
Yeah,
Unless they can hit the running back on the way to the quarterback.
Right. I just confirmed that he's a linebacker in Yahoo. Do we know in Sleeper if he's got the DL tag or is he still just a linebacker?
I haven't looked.
Yeah, I mean that's the question, right? Like if he's got the DL tag in some places or an edge tag, then yeah, he's got some value. But just as a linebacker, there are just a handful of those guys, those pass rush linebackers. I'm starting in a regular linebacker slot. But Brandon had a great point. There was no Atlanta pass rush last year, so they need everything they can get.
Probably gonna be on the field a lot too, with their offense, being downgraded with all the losses.
Yeah, and when you're talking about their first overall pick, they need a lot more than just a pass rusher. They could use a quarterback, they could use a running back, they could use a wide receiver. All they really have is a tight end, which is not a recipe for success in the modern NFL. John, which player do you have up next for us?
Alrighty, next guy I was looking at is Jordan Whitehead, and I can't take credit for this. This is a Kyle Bellafuel call from IDP guys. Full disclosure: when the season ends, I check out for like 2-3 months. I got other things to do, So this is a Kyle Bellafuel call, so I'll shout him out. But the Jets last year were starting Elijah Riley at one point at safety every week. That's how thin and depleted they were at their safety core. So this year, currently, they've got Ashton Davis and Jordan Whitehead slated to be the starters with Riley, LaMarcus Joyner, Will Parks, and some other guys no one's heard of in backup. I think it's just a no-brainer that he's going to probably see a good amount of time. Hopefully, as a guy that plays in the box at least a good amount. And this is just one of those safeties you can get later in drafts that should be pretty productive for you. Not a lot of people have on their radar. And he was solid in Tampa, and there were a lot of mouths to feed in Tampa. And that was a good offense too. It's like not like their defense, was on the field the most of any team in the league or anything. Mm-hmm. And this guy still had good numbers week to week when he was healthy. So I think this is just a no-brainer, good safety 3, 4, and deeper leagues that you can get late and get good production.
Absolutely. I'm hoping to shore up that safety position on my beloved Jets. Brandon, who do you have next for us?
Defensive tackle Bilal Nichols. He signed with the Raiders this offseason. They're running the 3-4 defense now. So Bilal Nichols, he's had experience in the 3-4 as a defensive tackle with the Bears. So I think he's an intriguing player. He's only 25 years old. He showed steady improvement. You just look at his last 2 seasons. 2020 he had 40 tackles and 5 sacks. This past season, 21, he had 51 tackles and 3 sacks. And now he's going to the Raiders, and they got those 2 edge rushers, Max Crosby and Chandler Jones. They're going to be taking up much of the attention. So I think he can be like a sleeper as a defensive tackle, and probably have a career year in sacks. So that's what I'm looking at him. I'm very intrigued by Bilal Nichols.
Is there any worry of him getting pushed to more of a run stuffing role that's going to take away his upside, John?
Oh, I don't know, man. We'll have to wait and see on that. It's not like a lot of people are. This is only a crazy deep league thing to begin with. And right. I think if you want to take a shot in the dark like this, I love that because it's defensive tackle. If you get that right, you're way out in front of everyone, right? That's one of those positions that drops off a cliff. So if you guess right, you've got a huge advantage over everyone else. So I like that call. I like that a lot.
All right. Well, speaking of a defensive tackle, Gary really likes BJ Hill. Now, Hill's 27, a little bit older than Bilal, but in a similar way, he went from the Giants, moved over to Cincy, and then he re-signed, right? Signed that 1-year contract most big men do. And then they brought him back again. So he averaged about 6 points per game. It's not a lot, but if you're in a defensive tackle required league, 6 points sometimes can be the difference between winning and losing, especially in deeper leagues. John, who do you have next up on your list?
Alrighty. Next guy I had was, this is not a low profile name, but Von Miller is a guy that was going out of style. Going into this last season, he was going out of style. He had been having lower production in Denver, and he kind of got new life with the Rams and came back to the old Von Miller, so to speak. And this is a little risky because anyone that knows the Bills' defensive, their pass rush, package and how the snaps go, there is no big fish over there. It's like everyone tops out at 50% of snaps. It's a true rotation with no one that's the guy. And I think there's a chance he could be the guy, and that would be valuable. Even if we get 60% of what we got out of him last year, that's a solid, third or fourth defensive end in those deeper leagues. And there's value to these guys that are at the end of their career and can still play. How many times have we shoveled dirt on Cam Jordan and he has double digit sack seasons? You know what I mean? Harrison Smith, everyone thought Harrison Smith was done before last year. He was a top 10 safety last year. So I think he's still got some juice in the tank, and I'd be more than willing to take a shot on him if the league is right.
Yeah, I have to agree with you on Von Miller. Part of being a defensive lineman is getting your grown man strength, learning all the nuances of the game. And it's true. You see this, especially with these young defensive tackles coming in. They dominated a bunch of 18-year-olds in college.
Right.
And all of a sudden you get, you go to a league where people are feeding their families based on getting past you or stopping you. And that's a whole different ball game. And you look at somebody like Ashawn Robinson, who came from Alabama, right? Best defensive lineman, probably interior defensive lineman of his class. And it took him a while to get his legs in the NFL. And now he's with the Rams, working next to Aaron Donald. And all of a sudden he has, really emerged as a solid situational defensive tackle. So I'm excited to see what Von Miller does up there in Buffalo, especially if they can start ringing up some points and,
get some talented defense. It's a very talented defense.
Yep.
You should have a lot of pass rushing opportunities, especially, how high potent that offense is too. And, they got a lot of stars. Greg Rousseau, the first round pick last year,
yep.
Isaiah Oliver on the defensive line. And the secondary is just awesome, man. Number one pass defense in the league. I think Von Miller is going to do quite fine. He still has shown that he has a talent. He's not washed at all. So that's a very intriguing player right there.
Now, Brandon, who's next up on your list?
I'm going to go with Yannick Ngakoue. I know he's not really low profile, but he's not regarded as one of the best pass rushers. But he's shown a consistent level of production. Last year with the Raiders, I believe he led the team in sacks with 10. He was traded to the Colts this offseason for cornerback Rock Yassin. And I'm intrigued because the Colts they lacked a pass rush last year. They had young Kwity Paye. They lost Taquan Lewis. So they're looking for a main pass rusher. And I think they got that with Yannick Ngakoue, man. He's so quick off that edge. He's definitely one of the most talented pass rushers in the league. And just having him next to DeForest Buckner, and then the development of Kwity Paye, I mean he's gonna help Kwity Paye develop a lot better because they're not gonna be able to account for all those guys. So I'm very intrigued. I think this can be a career year for Yannick Ngakoue. It's very interesting because Ngakoue, his lowest amount of sacks, I believe, is like 8. He hasn't had any less than eight sacks in the season. So I think him playing on that Colts defense with all those playmakers Kenny Moore and Leonard. This could possibly be a career year for him. And plus, he's been in the Gus Bradley, the new defensive coordinator coming from the Raiders. He's familiar with the system. He's played him for years. So he's excited about playing in that Leo role, which is that main pass rusher role. So that's why I put his name down. I'm very intrigued by him. I think you have 10 or more sacks this season.
That's awesome. I'm hoping for big things from Yannick. He's hitting that, he's past his mid-20s. He's starting to figure it out, it looks like, right? He's bounced around to a couple of teams. Hopefully he can find his home now and really start to turn it on. Before we get to our last players, is there anybody, John, that you are just avoiding? You saw the signing and you're like, I'm out.
Yeah, absolutely. So I feel real iffy about Rashaan Evans. There was Jesus, I can't remember. I am not in football mode, fellas, in case you haven't noticed. But who is that linebacker that was gonna replace Foye Oluokun? Michael Walker. There we go. That guy. So he was locked and loaded. Rashaan Evans gets signed, to the Falcons, and everyone thinks that that's the other inside linebacker, and it's going to be just like last year. You got Deion Jones, 10 tackles a week, Foye Oluokun, 10 tackles a week, automatic all season, and I just don't believe it. Rashaan Evans is crap. He's got a 44.5 PFF grade, and last year, with the absolute slaughter that happened to the Titans linebacker unit, he was still not able to retain. He got beat out by Monty Rice one week, for Christ's sakes. He just never was able to make it happen. And Hollywood, well-known Titans fan, was even jumping off the ship last year. And if Hollywood's not into it, I'm all right. So I don't trust that. I would wait and see on that. If I had to bet on one, it would be Michael Walker, to get that other role for the Falcons.
Yeah, sometimes when you think about players, you sort of have an image in your head and then you dive into the numbers. For me, Rashaan Evans was one of those players. I was like, man, I remember him being better. So, you look over at, PFR, you check their stats. You're like, oh, he had almost back-to-back 900 snap seasons. Then you go over to PFF and you're like, oh, yeah, that's right. He wasn't very good.
No.
He had a lot of snaps, but he wasn't very good during those snaps. Brandon, do you have any love for Rashaan?
No, absolutely not. I was, it's funny because I was talking to Gary. He was worried after the signing, Rashaan Evans, because I wrote my Michael Walker article for the Key and Diagnose, how he's supposed to break out this season. He's in a prime position to break out, and I'm not worried about what's the guy's name.
Rashaan
Evans, yeah.
Yeah, Rashaan Evans. He was phased out of the Titans linebacker group last season. Was it
David Long beat him out?
David Long,
yeah,
took over as the main linebacker, and then they even picked up Zach Cunningham.
Right.
He started taking playing time away. He was completely phased out of the defense. And, you're just looking at Michael Walker. He's played well in his limited snaps. And the team has talked about, developing these young talent. It just makes sense. Put Michael Walker in there. Why are you going to put, this retread in there? And when you got all this promise with Michael Walker,
yep.
He's great in coverage. He can defend against the run. You got Deion Jones and Michael Walker. It's going to be hard for teams to throw against those two linebackers. They're both terrific in coverage. So, I'm not worried about this guy. Michael Walker is a breakout candidate, man.
Yeah, when guys can walk off the street onto the team and take your snaps, doesn't say a lot about the fact that you had earned any of those snaps prior to that. Brandon, who is one player you're avoiding?
It's going to be Myles Jack, who's picked up by Pittsburgh. I don't know what the heck Pittsburgh is doing. Last year they traded for another Jacksonville linebacker, Joe Scobert. That didn't work out. They end up releasing him and then signing Myles Jack after Jacksonville released him. And they're a team that needed linebacker depth badly. So that should tell you all you need to know, about how bad Myles Jack is. If Jacksonville released him. He's been a mediocre fantasy asset. I think his most tackles is like 118. He's not a high volume tackler. He lacks big play ability. Only like 6 sacks in 6 years, only 3 interceptions. I think Scobert has been more productive than him.
He is definitely living off of his name,
right,
and his draft capital.
Yeah, Pittsburgh is going to be terrible against stopping the run again. That's why I'm high on Minkah Fitzpatrick. They were so terrible, and the running backs will get into the second level. It's probably going to happen again. They got one of the worst linebacker units again with Jack and Devin Bush. Those guys have done nothing.
Oh yeah, but Bush is bad too. And so I love what you're saying here. So 37.7 PFF for Myles Jack, by the way. So that's even worse than Rashaan Evans. I've been taking Robert Spillane like end of these best balls, like pick 50, because I think that's where it's gonna between beating out Devin Bush or Myles Jack, he's gonna beat out one of them at some point. Or the injury Grim Reaper is gonna get one of them. So I've been taking some Robert Spillane because I think you're right, Brandon.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was looking at him in the IDP incentive league. I said, I might want to invest in him. It was my last picks because you're looking at the fantasy production when he starts. I mean, he does an incredible job, man. He's collecting double-digit sacks. I mean, Myles Jack is just vanilla fantasy asset. He's finished as a linebacker 4 or 5, linebacker 50 something last season. I mean, he doesn't move the needle.
All right, John, now that we talked about who we do not want, give me somebody else who you do want.
Yeah, this is more the same. Just Casey Hayward, new situation, new team. And it's just more of the same, right? It's just moving the whatchamacallit, the corners around with this guy here. So this is the Falcons, and this is okay. So Isaiah Alvarez definitely going to be a factor there. Hayward will probably see some snaps as well, but it's we need to see how the snaps turn out for this. But having AJ Terrell there after the year he had last year and the improvement year after year with him, he's so good. Like that's my early corner one for this year for IDP is AJ Terrell, and I think that's gonna help guys like Hayward and Oliver get some points. So that's more what I'm thinking. That I mean, we have to wait and see. Who knows? Not every team's going to play 3 corners at 100% of snaps, but if he gets enough playing time, there are other factors that help that. Also, it's a dome team. Yeah, that does help, right? Mother Nature screws with that stuff a little bit. I don't know. I just think it's worth a stab. And like Gary was talking about, if we're wrong on these, there's so many corners out there. Who cares? Just blow them out the airlock and adjust and move it forward. But yeah, that's what I was thinking. Just Casey Hayward maybe, and he had I believe he was. So have you guys heard of that all 22 league that started PFF?
No.
Okay, so it's all 22 players, punters, kickers, offensive line, all of it, and they score based on your PFF score during the year. That like week to week. That's how you get points. Yeah. So it's a new league concept. And what kind of piqued my interest with this was Casey Hayward actually scored the most week to week as a corner last year in this league style, which I had no idea that he was like actually good. So I was like, oh, okay. Well, that piques my interest a little bit. So, he's actually good. So he's not going to get yoinked or anything. And he's got AJ Terrell on the other side. He plays in a dome. I mean, it's a decent shot in the dark for a streaming corner.
Yeah, definitely. Cornerback strategy is no guilt. You don't have any connections, nothing. If they fail, they fail. Move on.
That's
Move on.
Yeah,
Brandon,
man.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Before we move on, I love AJ Terrell, man. You just watch that on tape, man. He's not only a great cover corner, but he's great against the run. You watch him, he comes up and he just stops the run. Him and Kenny Moore are my favorite corners in the league, just watching them, the way they defend the run. And then Casey Hayward, yeah, he was indeed one of the best cornerbacks last season in coverage. He's probably going to play the other boundary corner. And then Isaiah Oliver, he's going to be the nickel guy because Dean Pease loves him in the nickel. So, Hayward and Terrell are going to get, 100% of the snaps. And I'm hoping that Isaiah Oliver can get, 75, 80%. And way he's being used. That way he can break out as a corner.
That would be fantastic. Brandon, you're up. Who's your guy?
Okay, yeah, one of my favorite breakout candidates, under the radar guy, is Dorance Armstrong. He's going to replace the guy who left to the Broncos.
Randy Gregory.
Randy Gregory. How can I forget his name? I drafted him in the IDP Center League. But yeah, he had 5 sacks last season, 37 tackles, 5 sacks, and he had a fumble recovery for a touchdown. He started 5 games. He's a young player. He's only 25 years old, entering his 5th season. He collected these stats on 56% of the snap rate, because they got that rotation with Dallas. But I'm thinking with Randy Gregory gone, Armstrong is very versatile. He not only can play on the outside, he's going to start off on the outside, and probably on passing downs, they can move him inside the defensive tackle, have him rush the passer. That way they can have Lawrence and some of the other guys, Fowler, Parsons, in there rushing from the edge. Yeah, he's one of my favorite guys, man. He's a young and ascending player. You watch him on tape. He's great at stopping the run. I think it's going to be a breakout year for him, man. I wouldn't be surprised if he leads the Cowboys in sacks, if he gets like 10 sacks.
Ooh, I like that. I'd be happy with that. I'm a Cowboys fan. I'd love that. That'd be great.
So as a Cowboys fan, are you looking for big things from Armstrong this year?
Oh, I'm not even going to BS you guys. I am not looking at football at all. I just did this because Gary asked me to.
Listen, I understand. I am a big off-season is the off-season guy. I usually start warming up the IDP muscles come like May.
Yeah, right. After the draft, there's like a rhythm to it, right? Like draft goes to preseason, goes to week 1, and we go from there. So yeah.
All right, gentlemen. So those are all of our players that we wanted to talk about. Is there anybody else we wanted to hit on today? Did we want to talk a little bit about Baker Mayfield and what's going on with him and the Browns?
Yeah, so that interview, he said he feels disrespected, and I mean that's the headline I saw. I didn't watch the interview, but I think in the immortal words of Herm, you play to win the game. If you got a chance to get Deshaun Watson, but besides the other stuff, football talent, he is light years better than Baker Mayfield. So you go get Deshaun Watson and you play to win the game. And too bad, Deshaun. If you don't like it, go somewhere else. I mean, not Deshaun, Baker, go somewhere else. Yeah. So it is what it is. It's the nature of the business. But it looks like he got his feelings hurt. What do you guys think about that?
Brandon?
It is what it is. I mean, they play in one of the toughest divisions in football. The Ravens. They're going to be back in the playoff hunt. They had some bad luck with injuries.
Oh, yeah.
The secondary, Lamar Jackson went down like the last, 4 or 5 games. They were 8-3 before Lamar Jackson's injury. So they probably would have been in the playoffs. So, Cleveland, their team, they're very well set up with the offensive line, the defense. They're very, very talented overall team. I think the missing link is a quarterback. And Baker Mayfield, he hasn't cut it. And he's very inconsistent. His rookie year was his best season. He's been very disappointing. I know he had the shoulder injury, but Deshaun Watson came available, and Browns, they took advantage. So I mean, it is what it is. Mayfield, they're gonna have to find a way to trade him. I don't know,
do something with him.
Yeah.
I have to say, I am generally on team player every time, right? I don't take the franchise's side. I don't care about the franchises. I'm always about the player. So I'm on 2 minds on this, right? Like, he did try to play through a bad shoulder injury last year.
Yeah.
He did.
Yep.
And as a dynasty guy, right? I have my Rider Dynasty podcast. I'm always talking about offense. There were many times where we were just like, sit down. You're hurting the team. You're hurting the offensive weapons just from a purely fantasy and selfish point of view. You're hurting the team. So I don't know why the team continued to let him play hurt if they were then going to use that against him in the long run.
Yeah.
it seems a little disingenuous, right? Like if you're going to let somebody play hurt, then you have to acknowledge the fact that they were hurt. So their performance shouldn't be reflected in how you're going to treat them in the offseason. But however, if he thinks that, because he made a comment about how would you feel if somebody came to your cubicle and booed you?
Right.
Well, you know what, buddy? You can suck it. Because you obviously haven't worked in the real world. Because people come by all the time and tell us we suck.
Yep.
All the time. I'm a middle school teacher.
Oh, yeah.
If I don't have a kid cursing me out on a daily basis, it's not a day. Like, people always complain. So this doesn't equate, but I found out last week that I'm an 8th grade English teacher. And next year they said to me, guess what? You're going to be a 7th grade social studies teacher.
Oh,
Okay. But that's the world. So Baker, guess what? You were the starter. They came to you and said, you know what? You know what you're going to do next year? You're teaching social studies, buddy. Right? You're not going to be the starting quarterback. You're going to be on the bench. Watson is going to play. And if he can't, then you get to come in and do what you do. And you have to suck it up because it's your job. It's my job. So I'm going to teach social studies. Baker's going to be a backup for a year unless he can get traded. But it's time to put on your big boy pants, right? I know. I cried. I was sad, right? I wasn't happy about being moved around. But you know what? Nobody cares. At the end of the day, you just got to do what you got to do for your job. Yep. I don't know. Sorry for my rant. That's just where I am on it.
I'm with you, man. And here's the deal. There's only a handful of really elite quarterbacks, and then another 6, 7 that are in the upper tier, and then it drops off a cliff. Baker can get traded to the Falcons and be a starter week 1 next year. You know what I mean? This coming year, whatever. There are teams that need a quarterback. He could get in the mix and win a starting job easy. He's like you said, he's just got to suck it up and get back in that mindset of I need to earn this again. It's not on a silver platter for me anymore.
Right, because like we were talking about defensive tackles, right? Sometimes it takes a little bit of maturity. And I know I'm generally the oldest guy on most of these podcasts. It's honestly the only reason I go on with Gary is so I feel young every once in a while. But, a lot of that does just come with age, right? Like a little bit of perspective. And I think Baker needs somebody to get in his ear and offer a little bit of perspective. Ran over. I apologize.
No, I love it. Love it.
All right, guys. Well, hey, this was a good pod. My heart's with Gary right now. So it is time for tags. We're going to let people know where they can find us and any final thoughts that we have. First off, let's make sure that you are following Johny The Greek at OrangeMan3142 on Twitter. Listen to his podcast, DF Triple S. He also does the Johny The Greek free real estate pod. Follow all of his work over at the IDP guys. He is truly one of the best minds out there in IDP. Johny, any final thoughts?
No, just thanks for having me, guys. It's always a pleasure to talk. I apologize that I'm not in full mid-season sharp mode, just kind of here. But I would love to have both of you on the free real estate pod at some point in the next 2 to 3 months here. So expect a DM, both of you. I'd love to have you on. Thanks for having me, fellas. I hope you guys have a good off season.
If my articles were as long as yours, I would take half the regular season off too, man. It's like Gilgamesh. See, I should be an English teacher. Brandon, any final thoughts?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at bjack83. Me and Gary will be working with each other all this season on IDP content. I'll be writing the key diagnosed articles, and we're continuing the dime drop. We usually do it on Fridays, but I think we want to take a break this Friday, I believe. And Gary's dealing with personal matter as well too. But we go over all the teams, one by one, and we discuss all the fantasy relevant players from each team. So I, look forward to doing that. And when the season comes, we're going to be doing the Sunday morning live show and helping people make sit decisions.
Looking forward to that. Make sure you're following the man, BJack83 on Twitter. As always, thank you to Brandon and Gary for helping put the show together. Thank you, John, for coming on and sharing your brilliance with us. Thank you to everybody out there for tuning in. Make sure you tune in to Getting Defensive every week for your IDP content. Check out Gridiron Ratings, everything you need for the other side of the ball. All of my thoughts are with Gary and Michelle and what they're going through right now. So, my thoughts are with you, Gary. I'm here. So remember, it feels disingenuous to end this with a normal tagline. So I'm just going to say, hug the people you love, right? And if they're not near enough to hug, give them a call and let them know you're thinking of them. So be safe, everybody, and we'll catch you next week.